In today's video, I am going to show you how to make the easiest beginner quilt. Hi, I'm Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts, and today I am going to show you how to take a jelly roll like this and turn it into this. Now, if you don't know what a jelly roll is, you saw me hold this up, and let's explain a little bit more. A jelly roll is a bundle of 2.5-inch strips of fabric, and there's typically 40 of them in a bundle. Now, when you go to put this together, you're going to be joining it together with 1/4-inch seams, these different strips. Don't overthink it, okay? So typically a jelly roll will come with different strips, okay? So this one is one I got that was actually cut by a quilt shop. That's why it doesn't have these pinked edges. And each of these strips is different fabric, as you can see as we go along. All right, so I don't have to overthink this at all. I am just going to take the top one and I'm going to stitch it to the next one. I'm going to keep going, keep going, keep going. However, having said that, let's take a look at this one, for example. And this one here has about 4 strips of each color in it, okay? If I had one like this, I would mix up the strips a bit because I don't think you're going to want just like a real, a whole bunch of green and a whole bunch of blue. It's much more interesting to mix up the fabric. So that's what I would do if I had one like this. Now, something else I wanted to mention to you, and by the way, stick with me to the end of the video because I've got some other ideas on how to change up the look of this that's really easy to do too. But when you get these, you can see that the edges are pinked on these. And what that means is there's an awful lot of fluff that comes off these, okay? So before you get into working with your jelly roll, I suggest you take one of these sticky rollers, go across the top on both sides. You may have to, take this off and go to the next one because you can see, all that on there. It looks like confetti cake mix. Angel food confetti cake mix is what that reminds me of. My favorite cake. Okay, but you're going to do that because otherwise, if you don't, when you open it up, the fluff just starts coming off. It'll get all over you. Okay, so that's a little tip there to make it a little easier to work with the jelly roll strips. So, having said that, I have a jelly roll strip that I want to show you how to put it together. So I want to meet you at the sewing machine and I'll give you instructions on how to put this together. So I have just pulled off the first few strips from the jelly roll that I'm working with, just to show you how to put them together. And then I'll explain what you need to do after you've watched the first part of this. So, as I said, I've got about 4 strips here. Here's my first strip. And you want to make sure you open the strips up. You don't need to press them first or anything like that. We'll get to that later. But all you're going to do is join them together with a 1/4-inch seam. So right sides together. Okay. Just make sure they're lined up nicely there, that we're getting them nice and straight as we stitch them together. Okay, and then I'm going to start stitching them here. I got my little leader here to start with. Okay, and I need to make sure my presser foot's going to come up. There we go. And here we go. Okay. The first 2 strips are together. Isn't it exciting? Okay, so now I need to take off my little leader there. I don't have my ender going here just for demo purposes. But I'm going to take that off. And I am going to press this. Now, it doesn't really matter which direction you press in. I would press them all in one direction. So just decide whether you're going to press towards the front ones or you're going to press towards the one you just added. I think it's easier to press towards the one I just added. Okay, I'll get that down a little bit there before I start. And I'm just going to use my seam roller. You can use your iron if you want for this. Again, for demo purposes, it's just quicker for me to show you doing it at the machine like this, okay? So I have 2 strips together, right? You're going to end up with these on your lap, by the way. I don't think you want them on the floor. So the next thing you want to do is put the next strips together. Oh, one important thing I forgot to mention to you. Before I did any of this, you may or may not have noticed, I've cut off my selvages on all these first. You can cut them off as you go along. You can use your rotary cutter, you can use your scissors, whatever works for you, but do take those selvages off before you start stitching the strips together. Okay, let's line up these. So now I've got 1 and 2 together, and now I'm adding 3. Take off that little leader again. There we go. And because I was pressing them towards the most recently added strip, I will do the same thing here. All right. get that down like that. So I think you can probably see what's happening here, right? Here we go with strip number 4, add to the group. Just gotta shake them out a bit there. And I gotta say, getting jelly rolls that are cut by a quilt shop rather than the pre-packaged ones is kind of nice, because you may have noticed there's no pinked edges here, so I'm not getting all that fluff coming off that I normally would with these, even after rolling them. Okay. Alrighty, so you can see that we're starting to get a long strip here, right? And it's going to get longer. That's why I say you're probably going to end up with them on your lap. That's what I find happens with me, and that works just fine. Let's just get them over here. All right, so this is what I've got. Now, the one thing you do want to probably keep in mind is, I guess it doesn't matter so much, but I've kind of arranged my strips here a bit because there was 2 of each strip in my jelly roll. So I want to kind of keep in mind this was the first one I started with because of how I've arranged them. But I'm not going to get into that with you. However, so the next step to do in this construction process is to keep stitching the rest of the jelly roll together with that 1/4 inch seam, pressing as you go to the most recently added strip. And then when that's done, you're going to have this really long fabric strip that's 2.5 inches wide. And I want to finish my sewing here and then show you what you do once you've gotten to that stage. Now I finished sewing all my strips together, so I have this huge long strip, or this huge pile here that's all joined together. So the next step is to start making this into something that looks a little more like a quilt, right? So first thing you want to do, find your end piece. Okay, it can either be the beginning or the end piece, it doesn't matter, but you want to find the one that isn't attached on one side, right? And you want to cut it off about 18 inches in, thereabouts. Okay, so I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to cut it off. I can put that aside for some other project, okay? Now I've cut off that 18 inches, and now I need to find the end of this long strip. So I already have found this because I knew which one it was. So the next thing I want to do is to put these 2 together. Okay, and match them up along the long side, because the next step is to actually go back to the sewing machine and sew with a 1/4 inch seam all along the long side, all those strips. Now, the only thing you have to be careful of as you go along is that these aren't, you know, twisted up. You'll find they get a bit twisted up as you go along, so just take your time, make sure you match them up as you go along, and you're going to stitch all this together with a 1/4 inch seam. So I'll meet you at the sewing machine and show you how that goes. So now I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch seam and sewing all down the long side here. So just take your time as you go along, make sure those edges are lined up quite well. And as I said, you may have to kind of unravel some of your strips as you go along. So just take your time and sew all along. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you the next step. So I'm coming up to the end of this first stitching, where we're stitching along the long edge of the strips. And I just want to show you what you may end up with here, because there may be a bit of a loop kind of twisted loop kind of thing going on. So I want to show you how to handle that. So let's just get up to that area. Okay, so I'm going to stop about here because I want to leave myself some room here to deal with this. So you can see as I come up here and I'm matching my sides here and I want to sew them together, that I'm coming up with this kind of a thing here, and there's no way to get around that really. So what I want to do is I want to cut that, okay, approximately in half. So I'm just going to kind of pull it like this. If it's not exactly in half, not to worry about it. Okay, approximate will be just fine. So I'm going to cut that. Okay, and then that way I will be able to stitch right to the end of this area. And I've got one more seam under there. Make sure it's going the right direction. Okay. And let's see how well I did when I get to the end. Okay, I cut my thread, and well, that's pretty darn close to being cutting halfway, I would say. I don't think I could have done any better than that, right? So now I have these strips all sewn together. All right, so you've got like 2 strips sewn together. And because we cut that 18 inches off at the front, you're going to see that you're going to have some different fabrics, you know, going together as well. So I'm going to reel this in, and I'm going to show you the next step in this construction process. So what's the next step when you've got this long strip a little bit shorter? Half the length it was at first, right? Because we stitched them together. Okay, so at this point in time, you should really be pressing. All right, so you want to open up, this is my end, right, where we cut that one in half, that loop, and you want to be pressing it. It doesn't matter which side you press it to, but you need to get this pressed nice and flat. Once it's all pressed, then you need to find your beginning, okay? So your end and your beginning. So there's my end, here's my beginning, and you put them together. Now, it's up to you which way you want to put them. So you may want to run along a little bit, see how things are coming together. You may just want to wing it and see what it turns out like in the end. So you're going to put those together, right? And you are going to stitch those together with a 1/4 inch seam. You're going to go all along again. So I'm going to go to the machine and show you how that goes. So I've got everything pressed, and now I'm back at the machine. I've decided to put it together this way. So there's the one end and there's the other end. I'm going to put it together and stitch along this edge. So I just need to line those up, and then we'll just start stitching. So I'm just going to keep stitching this together. Again, I'll have that loop at the end that I need to cut and then finish sewing. And then I would be opening those up, pressing that seam again. So I will then show you what it looks like and explain the next step. All right, so here is what I've got now. We've got 4 strips all sewn together, and of course you're going to have to do some pressing, right? You're going to have to press that center seam. Again, doesn't matter which direction, but you're going to be pressing the whole long strip like that. And once you've done that, then you need to figure out where's the other end of this. Okay, here's the other end, right? So now when we put them together, because we're going to do the same thing, we're going to stitch along the long edges here again with a 1/4 inch seam. And by the way, don't worry if your ends are not matching up exactly perfectly. We're going to be doing some trimming at the end. But you're going to have to decide which way you want this to go. Do I want it to go like this? Do I want it to go like this? What do I want to do? So I'm going to decide that. Then I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and just show you how I start this one off. So I've made my decision. I'm going to be stitching this side to this side. So back into the machine it goes once I've got it lined up. So I'm lining up along the side here because, as I mentioned to you, the ends might not be exactly perfectly straight because I've been cutting them with the scissors, right? So that's okay. We're going to trim up later. So let me get these together here. Okay, so I think you get the idea, right? So we're going to be sewing these together, and then we're going to have 8 strips all the way across. So I'm going to finish this up, show you what it looks like. So this is what we have now. We've got 8 strips put together. So it's starting to look a bit more like a quilt, right? So I bet you know what we're doing next, right? We're going to be taking the end. There's the start. This is the end. And we're going to decide which side I'm going to put that on. It's getting so I have to almost go this way, probably for you to see what I'm talking about. And of course, you want to make sure you press that last seam you just stitched, right? And then I'm going to put them together, you know, maybe like that. Maybe that'll work. And then it's really going to be a lot bigger. So back to the machine. More sewing to be done. Okay, so I've decided I'm going to attach this side to this side and see what that looks like when I'm done. And again, just a reminder that those ends may not line up properly, so you're more concerned with the sides lining up, because we're going to trim off later on. Okay, here we go again. And one thing you'll notice as you go along here, when you get to these stages, is that you're going to be finding you're going to hit your seams a little bit more. You'll be going over the seams, so just double check and make sure they're going in the right direction so you don't have them, you know, partly flipped over. At least when you get to this stage, it doesn't take quite as long to do this sewing. I'm going to be stitching this up, cutting that loop again, of course, and then I'll show you what the end result of that stitching looks like. So here we are, we're almost at the end. So I've got 16 strips put together. It's getting pretty big, right? And I'm liking how it looks. And I gotta tell you, at this stage, it's a lot easier to find the beginning and the end of these pieces. So you're gonna have to press that center strip, of course. And then once you do that, you're going to be, of course, taking the two parts. This is the last stitching we need to do. You're going to take the parts, however you want to put them together. Again, you're going to be sewing along the long length of these pieces. But I just wanted to point something out to you. Even though it's easier to find the beginning and the end, it doesn't mean there's any less fabric on the table, right? What you could do at this stage, and even the one before, it gets a little difficult to cut that loop, right, when you're stitching. So at this stage, or the one before, it's probably easiest if you actually line up the pieces. You don't have to have them perfectly lined up because, as I said, you'll probably be trimming the ends, but line them up as best you can. Pull this over, you know, till you find that loop. Okay, you're gonna, right, find where that halfway mark is, really is what it is, and then cut that, okay, with your rotary cutter is probably the best way to go there. You could use your scissors, I suppose, but I would probably use a rotary cutter. That way, you're gonna just be sewing these two pieces together, and then your quilt top is going to be done. So I'll meet you at the sewing machine. I'll show you this last bit, and we're almost done. All right, last bit of sewing, okay, finally. So, I said it was easy, I didn't say it was quick, right? Did I say it was quick? Okay, it takes a little bit of time, but it is very easy to do. So, I'm going to be sewing this side to this side, and this is always kind of fun because it's the last stitching you do, and then it's like the big reveal, and you can see what you've created. So, let's get going. Okay, we're all done. Let's see what we've created. All right, what have we created? Well, let's see. We've got this nice, it's about a lap size quilt. Yeah, I think it looks pretty fun actually. All reds and blacks, very nice. So yes, very easy beginner quilt using just one jelly roll. Now, of course, if you wanted to make it larger, you could certainly add borders to it. That's up to you, but it gives you a nice size quilt already just with that one jelly roll. So at the beginning of this video, I told you that I would share some ideas with you for how you can give this quilt a bit of a different look. But before I do that, I want to draw your attention to the icon below this video. It's a heart with a $sign in it. And that is a super thanks. It's your opportunity to support the Chatterbox Quilts YouTube channel. For as little as $2, you can donate money so that I'm able to buy the items that I need to create the free videos that I provide for you. So if you choose to do that, just click on that icon and you can decide how much money you care to donate. Thank you so much. Now, what else can you do with this type of quilt to give it a bit of a different look? Well, there's a few things that you can do. So if I'm using this one as an example, you could take some half square triangles. These are 2.5 inch half square triangles. They're going to look a little bit bigger here because, of course, they are not sewn in right now. But you could take those and you could place them either between every different fabric strip if you wanted to. So perhaps over there, if you can see that. Or you could just choose to put them, you know, kind of helter-skelter here and there. But you could put them around and divide off every different fabric strip. So that's one way you can do it. It'll also increase the size of your quilt a little bit. The other thing you can do, and I actually have an example here, is similar to that. You could just use a square of fabric. So in this particular one, this Jelly Roll Race, which is kind of a Christmas themed fabric, I have taken, and this is actually patterned fabric, I'm not sure if you can see it or not, it's a tone-on-tone white, and I've actually put those between each of the different fabric strips. So whenever I'm changing fabric, you're going to see one of these white squares. So it gives it just a little bit more interest, and as I said, increases the size very slightly. All right, so there's that you could do. If you wanted to, you could even have a rectangle here. It doesn't have to be a square. It could be a rectangle. That will increase the size a bit more as well. So those are some other ideas that you can use when you're making this Jelly Roll Race quilt. Thanks so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified the next time I release a new video. And before you go, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com for more helpful quilting information.